There are roughly 26 numbers that govern the structure of the universe. Nobody chose them, nobody set them, they just are. And if any one of them had been even slightly different, not wrong, just different, you wouldn't be here to wonder about it. Neither would anything else. Today we're examining what physicists call the fine-tuning problem. Not because it proves anything on its own, we'll be honest about that, but because it's one of the most remarkable features of physical reality ever discovered, and it deserves more than a dismissive shrug in either direction. This is Doubt and Dawn. We follow the evidence. Let's see where it goes. Let's start with one number. The cosmological constant, sometimes called lambda, represents the energy density of empty space. It governs how fast the universe expands. Its observed value is approximately 10 to the negative 122nd power, in Planck units. That's not a typo. Physicists expected it to be close to 1. Instead, it's 0.000, and then 121 more zeros, and then 1. If the cosmological constant had been even slightly larger, the universe would have expanded too fast for gravity to pull matter together. No galaxies form, no stars, no planets, no chemistry, nothing. If it had been even slightly smaller, negative, the universe would have collapsed back on itself almost immediately after the Big Bang. Same result, nothing. The margin of error on this number for a life-permitting universe is 1 part in 10 to the 122nd. That's not a rounding error, that's the entire difference between everything and nothing. And it's not just one number. The ratio of electromagnetism to gravity. The mass difference between protons and neutrons shifted slightly and atoms become unstable. The strong nuclear force weaken it by 2% and hydrogen never fuses into heavier elements. Stars go dark. Each constant considered alone might be coincidence. Together, they form a pattern that physicists across the ideological spectrum have found difficult to ignore. Fred Hoyle was an atheist, a genuinely brilliant one, the astronomer who coined the term Big Bang, mostly as an insult toward a theory he thought was too convenient for theists. In the 1950s, Hoyle was trying to figure out how carbon, the basis of all life, is produced inside stars. The math kept requiring a specific nuclear resonance level in carbon-12, a very particular energy state that would allow the carbon to form and survive rather than immediately decay. He predicted it had to exist before anyone had measured it. It was found exactly where he said it would be. Hoyle later wrote, "A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as with chemistry and biology, and there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature." Fred Hoyle said that, not a preacher, not an apologist. An atheist cosmologist who followed his own math somewhere he didn't want to go. He never became a Christian. But he never went back to calling it coincidence either. Here's where intellectual honesty requires us to stop and do something most channels in this space won't do. Present the best counter-argument at full strength: the multiverse. If there are an enormous, potentially infinite number of universes, each with randomly varying physical constants, then it's not surprising that we find ourselves in one compatible with life. We couldn't be anywhere else. Observers, by definition, exist only in universes that permit observers. This is called the anthropic principle. It's a serious hypothesis. It's held by serious physicists: Leonard Susskind, Steven Weinberg, Stephen Hawking, entertained versions of it. It's not crankery. We should engage it honestly. Here's what the multiverse hypothesis actually costs. First, it is, by construction, unobservable and untestable. Every other universe, and by definition, exists beyond any possible detection. As a scientific hypothesis, it explains everything and therefore risks explaining nothing. When a theory can't be falsified, it's doing philosophy, not physics, which is fine, but we should call it that. Second, it doesn't eliminate the fine-tuning problem, it relocates it. A multiverse capable of generating universes with varying constants requires its own laws, its own structure, its own metaphysics that itself appears finely tuned. You've pushed the question back one level, not answered it. Third, and this is the Bayesian point, the multiverse isn't the only way to explain the data. We have two competing explanations for finely tuned constants: chance plus a vast number of unobservable universes, or intentional design by an intelligence capable of setting parameters. On prior probability alone, neither hypothesis is obviously superior, but one of them, design, is the simpler explanation in terms of ontological commitments. It requires one mind rather than an infinite number of universes. We're not claiming design wins. We're claiming the contest is real. Let's be precise about what fine-tuning does and doesn't establish. It does not prove God. No single piece of evidence proves God. That's not how evidence works in science or in law. What it does is shift probabilities. A universe fine-tuned for life is, on the numbers, more probable given intentional design than given blind chance. That's a Bayesian claim, and the math behind it is not subtle. Fine-tuning is one thread in a larger case: origin of the universe, origin of biological information, consciousness, the historical record. Each thread, examined honestly, points in the same direction. We'll examine each one. But here's what I want to leave you with today. The universe didn't have to be this way. The numbers that govern its structure are set to tolerances so precise that any deviation, however small, produces a cosmos where nothing complex can exist. Scientists don't dispute the numbers, they dispute what the numbers mean. That's the right question, and it's one worth sitting with. If the fine-tuning points somewhere, if the precision written into the fabric of reality reflects intention rather than accident, then we are not alone in this universe. That idea appears again in history, in a specific life, in a specific place, at a specific time, in a person who claimed to be the reason the universe was tuned the way it was, who said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Through him all things were made." The same precision written into the fabric of the universe appears again in the historical record, in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, where the evidence demands a verdict few honest investigators expect to reach. That's where we're going next. I'm glad you're here.